Hello, Charlie TCG here, and welcome back to my channel. Today, let's talk about NAIC, the top decks, and how it's really going to affect the metagame. In today's video, I'm going to break down the day one and day two meta share, and kind of like breaking out any of the predictions we kind of came with, and how this is really going to affect the metagame going forward. I know NAIC is definitely one of these closed format with only one big premier sort of event to this one, but I highly believe that these sort of results will impact Wells. It's a really good way to break down how every single deck works, and also looking at the best performing archetypes as well. So without further ado, let's look at the day one meta share. And day one meta share definitely was kind of where everyone kind of thought by some of the most noticeable archetypes being in there. Most likely that being Lugia, Raging Bolt, gardevoir, as well as also Dragapult and Miraidon. But definitely not the order about where some people may have thought about it. Lost Zone Box definitely was a little bit of a surprise. I did not expect Lost Zone to do incredibly well. But as people kind of thought that Dragapult was a little bit fraudulent, everyone is kind of loving that word right now, and not been performing as well as some people might have thought about it, it generally makes it a really good ample time for Lost Zone to do really well. Gardevoir also was doing very, very well at the late end of the online event, as well as also people really kind of like favouring pauses, and definitely that was the case in this tournament. So I would say Lost Zone is definitely very, very good in this one. Gardevoir has started to cut away from the likes of Jirachi. In theory, that they don't want Lost Box isn't as popular. Raging Bolt does not surprise me at how powerful it was. This reminds me a lot of like LAIC when everyone was playing Roy Moon, and now it's absolutely everywhere. And Raging Bolt was a little bit similar like that, but definitely performed a lot better, I believe, than what Roy Moon ended up getting at LAIC. Archeops and Lugia, it's always been a big combination for nearly 2 years in the Pokemon trading card game scene, and kind of they've gone from strength to strength. People really love it. It seemed like it's going to be a return with really good consistency card and legacy energy. So this being the most popular archetype wasn't that much of a surprise. Dragapult only being 5.6% definitely was the biggest shocker of the event. I half expected Dragapult to be one of the most popular archetypes right now. There was a huge masterclass on tour. There were so many people talking about this one on Twitter, including myself as well. Please check it out if you haven't, on my mastering video. And that definitely was a little bit of a shock seeing it perform so poorly. Miraidon also makes a little bit of sense, but also a little bit less than I kind of thought about it. If you think about it, Lugia and Gardevoir, very, very prominent bad match as Miraidon because of how powerful Iron Hand really can be, and the threat Miraidon can really do by getting that out turn 2. I generally think it's a very, very good placement of a deck right now. So this generally was quite a bit of surprise in top 6 archetypes, but definitely not as shocking as some people may have thought about it. If we see that translated to day 2, Gardevoir all of a sudden became the best most popular one, being nearly 22%, which is absolutely insane and a really, really good number, and it's definitely translated in the rest of the results. One of the other archetypes were kind of like shifted around. Lugia fell out of it. Lost Box kind of increased in numbers, a similar for a case with Miraidon, but decreased in likes of Raging Bolt and Dragapult. Again, they're all still exactly the same 6, but even decks like Shenpao performs so much better than some people may have thought about it. Similar thing like Charizard as well. We're definitely going to talk about Charizard next week in my Japan Championships, even more meta breakdown. But why exactly is Gardevoir doing incredibly well? Well, Monkey Dory absolutely unlocks a deck. So Gardevoir can actually hit for 220 damage, which is really, really powerful, and also has a really good way to manipulate any more damage, and also saving some energy attachments, which deck really does require. Raging Bolt also is a really, really kind of like still showing it is as strong, but still making sure 12%, but definitely was a huge decrease, similar like of Dragapult as well. I generally think this is quite irreflectful to really see. I think we are going to see a huge increase in Lost Zone and Gardevoir, purely on the basis of how popular they really did become in the latest sort of latter of the tournament. I do think Lugia's kind of fall down just a little bit, as they only got one top 32 spot, whereas Shenpao actually got a lot better than most people really did require, and I think that could actually see a huge uptake in play as well. Miraidon, I could see it just a little bit as a good answer to likes of Gardevoir, as Gardevoir is a very, very powerful matchup, but it does take a little bit of time to set up, and that's where really where total Iron Hands, or even an aggressive Iron Hand there, could really, really be the aggressor in that style of archetype. I also posted some polls on YouTube and kind of like talk about exactly how we kind of did. And some of them was we all thought that Prime Catcher was going to win. It was very, very close between this one and Unfair Stamp. If we got Unfair Stamp, that actually being correct, because the Gardevoir list that actually would have won would have had the likes of Hyper Blower, which is definitely a very interesting pick. People did think that Lugia Legacy would actually be the best new performing archetype, but actually Raging Bolt was the best one, which did get a top 16, and there's a few other really good archetypes that did also get top 16, and it's quite nice to see that it actually did do well. It wasn't like Roy Moon that kind of just fizzled off the planet. It still did very, very well, had a really good conversion rate, and actually paid quite a lot, even in the top half of the tournament. And definitely lots of people, and I even said this, lots of people did predict Gardevoir was going to win, have Stefan Ivanov, get his third NAIC title, but in fact, it was in fact lost to Lost Zone Box, and this one exactly here didn't gain that many new cards. So some of the new cards that did in fact gain was the likes of Bloody Luna and Iron Thorns, EX. Now, this is definitely a very, very powerful Lost Box, but definitely similar to how we've seen most of Lost Box being piloted for the last year, but only really added 2 new cards. But I would say this deck is a lot more aggressive than other sort of Lost Box decks really have become. You can see here they have 4 copies of Pokestop and 3 copies of Lost Vacuum. This can easily get to the turn 1 going second, like some Moonlight Shuriken. Some might even get to Lost Mine as early as possible by utilizing multiple Lost Vacuums, potentially going auto meaning you get to utilize as many Pokestops as possible. Limiting that from your opponent is a really, really powerful strategy. I also love Iron Thorns because lots of people did think that, oh, we're going to see a lot of Gardevoir. So Iron Thorns is really, really good to like counteract that sort of play. Yes, I know people did play a lot more Klefkis and Buttermane in their Gardevoir to try and counteract the some Iron Thorns, but really having that and really good knowledge of having that Iron Thorns can really shut down so many archetypes. Plus, also slowing down the likes of Raging Bolt by stopping their Ogerpon as well as also the Minion and Squawkabilly is definitely a very, very good strategy. I do think that this Lost Box deck is really, really powerful. It does play my new favorite card from the new format, which is Bloody Luna. I think that card's absolutely incredible and an absolute beast by having 260 HP and effectively can attack for free if your opponent's only got 1 prize card left. I think this really does put Lost Zone in a very, very good position of the format, and I'm very, very excited to see how it's really going to adapt moving forward, as some decks I do believe might be going back to playing Jirachi to see how powerful Lost Box really has become. Now let's look at the Gardevoir second place list, and it's definitely a few different things of how we're seeing most archetypes work. Now, for starters, we're playing Hyper Aroma as the ace spec of choice. For me personally, I think that Unfair Stamp is one of the best ways to play by that really good disruption. But Hyper Aroma is really good, especially if you go second. But again, nearly all of your curlies are, or sometimes could be good in the late game as well, if you desperately require. Enhanced Hammer, kind of like removing the likes of Legacy Energy, or sometimes even Mist Energy, so you can utilize likes of Cresselia. It's definitely a really good inclusion. We have seen even Temple of Sinnoh also in this list as well. So you have multiple ways to kind of negate the likes of the Legacy Energy, so making sure the Iron Hands can't exactly guarantee to get an extra prize card that way, or effectively you can actually get the correct amount of prize cards. Another also key effect as well is we've seen the introduction of Klefki come back in the deck. Lots of decks really just focus on the likes of Fluttermane as a really good way to limit any of your opponent from abilities, but having a Klefki, make sure they can shut down the likes of Comfies no matter where they are on the bench, as well as also Radiant Greninja as well. I do really like the style of play for Gardevoir, but I definitely am a bigger fan of having a rare candy, so you can really have that aggressive approach, potentially getting a Gardevoir out turn 2, or something like if you have a board of lots of rocks in the late game, you can easily energy accelerate to a Gardevoir very, very quickly. There's no brand new sort of really exciting things about Gardevoir, but one thing I noticed while watching the stream, and obviously that amazing finals match between the two of them, is how powerful Bravery Charm really is on some of your other attackers. You don't always need them when likes of Driftwood and Screamtail. You can kind of like negate sort of them taking the easy prize cards from likes of Cresselia or even a Monkey Dory, making sure that Ampy very much doesn't exactly guarantee a 2 prize KO. And also you can really utilize the Monkey Dory Adrenaline Brain to move around in your damage count as well, really to protect them and conserve any of their spaces as well. I do like the double Professor Churro scenario as a good way to counteract control, so it's also a good way to kind of pick up your Gardevoir so you're not going to have a liability. Collapse Team is kind of like really disappeared from most of the Gardevoir list, and mainly focusing more of the Artisan for the getting the basic Pokemon out, and Temple of Sinnoh to slow the likes of even Upper Neo Energy and Legacy Energy. Now let's talk about the next pretty much 5 different Gardevoir lists of top 4 as well as top 8, because there is a ton of them to kind of go through, and a few of them are definitely a little bit different. Now, this one here is quite unique in this one here. I believe it's a player from Japan, Quito, and they do play a Tatsugiri. Now, Tatsugiri I do like as a way to kind of like guarantee a Poke Gear and also as a really good pivot. It's a really good one to promote, but you definitely need to rely on having an energy in hand to attach to this one, or effectively picking up Predator Churro, or even the likes of a rescue board, which this deck doesn't in fact play. One thing I like about it is they do play the Unfair Stamp. It's a really good way to like negate any of your opponent having any really large hand size, and even the double Monkey Dory. If you have both Monkey Dory set up, you can effectively remove 6 damage counters from your field. That basically means Gardevoir can do 250 damage, or you can do an additional 6 damage count, deal additional more damage, which I really, really like about this one. It's a lot more setup, and potentially you can take 2 cards in a turn by even removing like Frigibacks, likes of Bidoof as well. So I do think it has a really good purpose for Monkey Dory, but that is takes some very crucial bench space. We can see definitely focusing a lot more on the TM evolution by playing 2. Make sure you don't really prize any as well, but then they do play more of the Boss's Orders instead of having the likes of Professor Churro scenario, where only playing 1 copy of this one, but still does play the Enhanced Hammer and 2 copies of Artisan and no Temple of Sinnoh or Collapse Stadium. Now, this is the the Australian list, and this is what kind of has a lot of people talking. And I'm a really big fan of this one, and definitely talking to my testing partners, this is one of the lists that they're actually really favouring to play. Again, you can see Enhanced Hammer really has come to stick around in gardevoir lists. It becomes a big sort of strategy. Instead of running like Temple of Sinnoh, you can easily search for this Enhanced Hammer from the likes of Arvin. They are playing the copy of obviously Cresselia, and even having more copies of the TM Devolution, which is definitely a very unique one around. But if we're going to be playing the Cresselia, if we are going to be spreading around a lot of damage counters with Monkey Dory, the TM Devolution actually makes a lot of sense. You can instantly kind of like take an easy price card that way and really set up the spread sort of attack. I think this could be incredibly good in the likes of the mirror match, and I generally think this could be a tech that Gardevoir should in fact be playing. Now, yes, I do believe that I think Rare Candy in Gardevoir is an absolute must, but trying to find a space for that could in fact be a little bit tricky. One thing I will noticing, they only are playing 2 copies of Bravery Charm, pretty much making that only one of them could be worked for Driftloon and Screamtail, and there's a lot of setup sort of damage around you're going to be having. And also that's not too bad, because you are playing Cresselia, you are playing Monkey Dory, so you are spraying a lot, so you can easily take the extra prize cards that way. Definitely something to be a little bit more considerate about looking into your Gardevoir. Now, this Gardevoir list here is very much similar to how we have seen other ones. There are no copies of Artisan, only focusing more on Temple of Sinnoh, no copies of Enhanced Hammer, but still playing the Klefki, and 1 copy of Monkey Dory, and 2 copies of Professor Churro's Scenario. On first it's not too bad, but does play a high count of energy by having 8 psychic energies. Now, I think this is a pretty interesting Gardevoir list, very much a little bit different. This is definitely maybe the build which I won't really be focusing on, but definitely one thing to at least have a look at as well by noticing some of the differences as well. Another one here is a little bit similar to like Stefan's list, but does play the Hyper Aroma, but also plays like some Mimikyu and TM Devolution, and also Luxury Escape, but no copies of the likes of the Bravery Charm, because you only play 1 copy of Screamtail and no copy of Driftloon. Definitely a little bit of an interesting take. I think this is definitely the most wackiest Gardevoir list with an Irida. Just noticing every time you look at this, you can't see, oh, there's a new one, like Enhanced Hammer. There's a copy of Artisan, 2 copies of Artisan, and no likes of Temple of Sinnoh. I generally think this Gardevoir list is a little bit too out there in my sort of cases, but seeing it get top 4, having a really good recognition about how creative Gardevoir really can become, focusing more on the spreading damage counters from like some Monkey Dory, as well as Cresselia. So I'm taking your multiple prize cards that way, protecting your guys from Luxury Escape. Granted, you do give up an additional prize card, but that's definitely something you could potentially work around. I'm a big fan of how Gardevoir is really going to be priced in the near future. We've seen that there's definitely the likes of multiple different aspects, including Hyper Aroma, Unfair Sam, and potentially even Hero Escape could kind of make its way in. And looking at the last one here, this is the last one of the Australian list, which we have in fact looked previously before, but always good to mention that. The same list didn't do incredibly well. I think got a top 16 as well, also a top 32 as well, plus a top 8 and a top 4. This testing group did incredibly well, and seeing it kind of get the recognition is really, really good. And the last Lost Box deck here is a little bit different to what we saw previously. Does play a little bit of less counts of the likes of the Pokestop, and that's really kind of the one big thing I can notice actually for this one. There's not too much really to talk about. I do think that Lost Box is in a very, very good position going into the format, and I do think Manaphy could potentially be a really good inclusion. I think it could really help in the mirror match, and if we saw Shimpao doing incredibly well, and I effectively think it could have a pretty good Gardevoir matchup as well, I think we could see a big increase of Shimpao, even going into the World Champions as well. Could we see Shimpao finally get more of a recognition going into this brand new format? Now, as we talk about all the top 8 and kind of give my little bit of insights in this one, I know it's literally only 2 decks. I talk about Gardevoir and Lost Box. I will now talk about the most noticeable and best placements of certain archetypes as well, which I think could do really, really well in this brand new format. We'll better start by looking at block lags. Now, this has had a lot of talk about, and I think this is one of the best ways to play control going in a new format, especially going to NAIC. We're looking at the likes of Raging Bolt, was one of the best decks right now, very fast, very aggressive, not really playing that many switching cards, and most importantly, mainly just big EX Pokemon. No real single price attacking. That's why the set became so good. You could chuck a Mimikyu out and play it, and the opponent's like, well, I now can't take any prizes. I just have to wait to deck out, and these guys will definitely deck out. But they could definitely deck me out. Or you can even just chuck on Snorlax in there, making sure them counter catcher play, and also they can't get any of their trees because they're very, very aggressive in their draw. But it also includes 2 brand new good cards. The Accompanying Flute, which makes you look at the top 5 cards of your opponent's deck and add any basic Pokemon to their bench, which can be really, really powerful, especially against block lag. And we saw it kind of utilized to some good success in the senior final. So it's also the Unfair handheld fan as well, which can really help move around any of the basic energies around your opponent's side, which I am a very, very big fan of this one, really for that good disruptive capability that this deck really has to offer. I do think this deck actually could be really good right now in the new format. I think it's very aggressive, as you see gardevoir doing incredibly well at a very, very high item count. So like some Misfortune Assistant Eerie could be really, really powerful. Maybe in likes of the TM Ever Devo could see an inclusion in the style of deck. But we see here there's absolutely zero energy, not even relying on the likes of a Radiant Charizard or even the likes of a the Chiyu for the Mills for strategies. Definitely a very interesting approach for block lags. And I do think still this is the best way to play control going into this brand new format. Miraidon also, we saw do incredibly well over in Japan. And this one here definitely kind of gained one of the new few cards, that only literally being Bloody Nurse Luna. Now, previously we saw the winning one does play like some Tatsuguri to kind of guarantee a way to kind of search for your Arvin and the boss's orders. But this deck here is going with a, I don't need that, I just need to play 4 of each and just hope I'm going to draw into this one because I'm very fast and very aggressive. For me, I give that huge props to this one. I think one of the biggest things we are seeing in lots of these decks is how powerful Iron Bundle really can become. If we see Gardevoir doing incredibly well, if we see Lost Box doing really well as well, kind of like putting that pressure over Iron Hand, especially if you go second, kind of get a turn one, going second, amp you very much, could be really, really devastating for your opponent to kind of go with. If it's Gardevoir, if you don't play Rare Candy, you're effectively not getting anything to respond to this by at least turn 2, kind of like gusting around this one, hoping that they don't bring it up in the access well. But you do play quite a lot of switching cards, especially in this style of deck. I think we could see Miraidon kind of like make a really good place in the metagame. They're playing the Zapdos and no likes of the Vitality ban makes pretty much make sure that you can only really big maximum damage output to be 230 damage from your electric Pokemon. Now, effectively, if you have Vitality ban, you can do 240, which can be really, really powerful to slow down the likes of any of your opponents' Raging Bolt if you see this one. But we might see a really big decrease in Raging Bolt if we go see a huge increase in Gardevoir, and that's a very, very poor matchup for likes of Raging Bolt. Definitely something to be a little bit considerate if you're Miraidon. If you are very much in a big, heavy sort of Raging Bolt format, potentially chucking in a Vitality ban wouldn't exactly be the worst thing in the world. Now, Raging Bolt did in fact get a top 16, and this one here definitely is really interesting and definitely something I really want to talk about. Now, one of the big standout things is they played 2 copies of Sandy Shocks, both the EX and the single prize version. Now, why do I like both ones? I love the EX Sandy Shocks because it's a guaranteed energy acceleration in the late game. As soon as your opponents they can do prize card. Pretty much as soon as they get a knockout, you can guarantee an energy acceleration. Ogrephone has to be from the hand, you might have to sacrifice an energy retrieval, try and like guarantee them, but Sandy Shocks is instant accelerates and fight energy from the discard pile. And you also have the basic Sandy Shocks as well, which is a really good NG attacking option into the likes of Mimikyu, basically to kind of force pinch a 7 prize turn, 7 prize game, which I do think is where Raging Bolt could really shine. You don't really want to use a bursting roar, but effectively having this magnetic burst in the likes of Sandy Shocks could open up the deck to be a lot stronger. Now, we did see obviously do very, very well in winning the juniors tournament. So we did see Raging Bolt did get some love as well, but I do think that we could see it kind of like really capitalize and do much better in this format. But if we are seeing an increase in stall, if we could see an increase, if we've seen a huge increase in Gardevoir, it might be time to unfortunately put Raging Bolt just back in the binder for now. But as we know, this is really good established archetype. Its time will shine, and when it is shining, it did incredibly bright for the last month and a half. Regidrago is actually a very, very much meta-relevant deck. And I'm going to talk about this one because it also plays like so Dragapult, and really keep that in mind because some of the best 2 Dragapult lists didn't actually focus on Dragapult EX as an archetype. So this one here, this Regidrago top 16, really focuses on Trail Mask Ogerpon. Now that's a very good energy accelerator for Regidrago. Instead of sacrificing a support of a turn for the Gardenia's figure, you can instantly have a Tiamat Ogerpon have a guaranteed energy acceleration, have a draw factor, and then just rely on the likes of energy switch as well. Now you can utilize this constantly again with the likes of Regidrago's V-Star ability, which pretty much makes you discard the top 7 cards of your deck and put any 2 cards from the discard pile into your hand, which is a very, very powerful sort of strategy of how Regidrago can really kind of go. Be super aggressive. If you discard your energy switch, you can just guarantee again. Now, yes, this might be a little bit of a slower approach if you're against a Pokemon that instantly ability locks your Ogerpons, or effectively you can't get those energies out and play. This deck is a lot slower, but you do play quite a lot of ways to kind of guarantee your energies back from the likes of Superior Energy Retrieval or even Earthen Vessel to get them from the deck. Your other attacking option in the deck, the likes of Goodra, Raging Bolt, and Noivern. Now, Noivern is really good against Raging Bolt, making sure you're not damaged by any of your opponent's basic Pokemon. Raging Bolt should be a huge deal amount of damage. That's kind of where I do believe the Superior Energy Retrieval is in that one, to kind of like pick up all your energies again. And Goodra, sorry about that, to kind of like wall your Regi Drago. I think it's a very interesting approach for Regi Drago, and I'm really intrigued to see how, sorry about that, this deck can really sort of progress in the next sort of format. And now Shen Pao, my favorite, my baby, the deck which I absolutely love and pretty much have exclusively played this last format. Did in fact get a top 32. Unfortunately, I believe they did bubble at the number 17 spot. So that's definitely a little bit of a sad thing to see, but it did incredibly well. Kind of going back to very similar to where I went with this one. You can see they did play a 2-3, 3-2 lineup of Excalibur and Bibarel, and playing one copy each of a 70 HP one. I think this is a very, very good strategy. People were very scared about likes of Dragapult, but if we saw Dragapult didn't do too well, eventually we could go back to a 60 HP one. But if we see Monkey Dory and Cresselia is going to be in nearly every single Gardevoir list, you might want to have that 70 HP one just for have that additional protection. Even playing back to the Iron Bundle because it's really good for that disruptive capability, and constantly reutilizing flights of Super Rod. But gone are the days of any Ionos or not Cyphermaniac, the Silenes, just focusing just on 4 Irida and 2 Cyphermaniacs. Code breaking, also playing 4 copies of the Rare Candy, 3 copies of the Super Rod, which I am a big, big fan of. There really isn't that much really of change. Shen Pao didn't really gain anything, but I think the position in the metagame became a lot better as people really were playing and testing against it. I personally thought, and you saw from my video, I thought Shen Pao was a really, really good inclusion in the deck. I think we are going to see it do really, really well in the next sort of metagame as well. I don't think this is the end of Shen Pao. I think it could generally be the start. And as far as I'm concerned, I think Shen Pao is going to go from strength to strength as the format really will be progressing. If we are saying goodbye to the likes of Dragapult and the big basic ones to say hello to Gardevoir, this is kind of where Shen Pao can really start to shine. Potentially adding likes of the Cassian clone could be a good inclusion. Now this is towards really interesting deck, which I've generally just called it Zard-Pult Pidge, because it's basically Charizard Pidgeot, but with a 2-1-1 line of Dragapult in the list. Very, very much a very interesting strategy about how this Charizard deck can really thrive. One of the really cool things I kind of noticed about this one, you don't need to roll your Dragapult straight away. You could just have a draw click and have a guaranteed draw factor in the deck. You even play the likes of Bibarel as well, so you have so much draw in this sort of deck. There is so much going on here, and anyone but Ford could have actually applied for the deck to be so well. Sorry, anyone but Ford could have done this deck absolute justice, because this deck is so powerful. I love the TM Evolution for that guarantees way to kind of get out your Charmanders, or even like Central Cloak in the early game. Obviously the Clefairy in there for that really good draw factor, high counts of the Fire Engine, and generally having the unfair talent for that disruptive capability in late game is just super powerful. I love Professor Churro scenarios, so you have that answer for control. You even have the power packs, you can constantly reutilize it as well. Even picking up the guys, really even potentially reset Charizard, which I absolutely love in this style of deck. Now, could I see this be the best way to play Charizard, or generally the best way to play Dragapult? I'm generally unsure. The format is still very new, very fresh, and very exciting, and this generally could be a really good way about how Dragapult could really be adapted into the Charizard list. As we've seen 2 versions of Dragapult EX before we've even seen a Dragapult EX list. So generally keep that in mind, that these decks place higher than where some people thought Dragapult EX would go. Future Hands did actually do pretty well as well, and I'm a big fan of this one as well. Obviously, it gained 1 brand new card, which is the Iron Thorns, which I think is a good inclusion for Future Hands. Kind of having that disruptive capability is really good. Slowing down your opponent's abilities, and also kind of like potentially doing these big one-hit KOs on likes of Lugia, and they can't guarantee get their Summoning Star, is a very nice inclusion. You can see the Iron Bundle and even Countercatcher as well, with only 1 copy of boss. So you have multiple gutting effect in this deck as well. I'm a big fan about where Future Hands could effectively go in the future. And it did in fact do really well, getting quite a few top 32 and even I believe a top 64 as well. So Future Hands is definitely here to stay, and generally I was very surprised by how well it did, and potentially could be really well poised in the metagame, even if we see a huge increase in Gardevoir, which could be what it could be going for it. Luke as well got a top 32, and it's by Alex Szymanski, and it is a very unique archetype, and I can't wait to talk about it more. First of all, you may look at this and go, oh, there's no more Luke, and then you kind of look at it and go, wait, there's 2 Luminions, there's 2 Iron Hands, there's a Drapion V, there's a Weirdir, there's basic Lightning Energy, there's a Thornton, there's Jamming Tower, and Earthen Vessel. What? So my personal belief is that this deck is constantly focused on having multiple Iron Hands CX to constantly go through and streamline those attacks, which is really good. If you get rid of Legacy Engine, like, no, I can't really attack with this anymore. And they're really favoring likes of this instead of having this Encino line. So relying on a second stage one line, which can effectively eat up into most of your constant position, really focusing more on Iron Hands. These people are read into say, okay, Luca could be really strong, but I do think that gardevoir is going to be one of the best decks right now. And this is a good way to kind of go around this one. Jamming Towers, stop them stealing additional more damage, or effectively taking additional price card that way. Thornton, so you can utilize most of your attackers, potentially remove at your liability like the Minion out in play, which is another very, very powerful thing. I do believe that Drapion is really good. I know all the strikes, the fusion strike, rapid strike, and Sting strike have all gone away, but this can one hit kill a gardevoir if it has 4 ranges attached to this one. Again, something to really consider. Weirdo as well to bring all the energies back to a huge amount of damage capability. I generally think this is a really interesting Lugia list. Now, Earth and Metal, I love as a way to kind of like discard your Arceus, but also guaranteed to get your Lightning Energy to get attached to a Iron Hands EX as a way to Energy Accelerate, which is very, very powerful and a really interesting way about how Lugia effectively could be played. This was the best way to play Lugia. There was no likes of Minccino or Cinccino's inside. Could this be the best way to play Lugia going into this brand new format? Now, finally, the Dragapult, which got top 32, and it's very similar to this I shared, and it is, of course, the Pidgeot build, because this build is definitely the best way to play it. Now, definitely this is one thing I've recognized from my testing, definitely talking about the field as well. This is the best way to play it. I think this R2 build can be a little bit slow. I wouldn't mind a 1-1 line this one, but again, it could eat up into your space. I think the Charizard build, yes, I know we saw it do very, very well. I think could be a little bit more reliant. You have to purely focus on the likes of a Charizard, which could effectively be a lot slower, or even having a straight up Dragapult, you just don't have the energy acceleration. Pidgeot is such a powerful one because you can't get any one card you might potentially need. We can still see they do play the Melee and the up in your energy as an additional way to kind of energy accelerate to your Dragapults. Radiant Charizard I love as a secondary attacking option because you can deal a huge amount of damage, effectively with all the damage counters you have around. Even with Kira and Defiance Power, effectively doing additional, pretty much doing 310 damage. That guarantees one hit KO on a Gardevoir EX, even if you're behind in prizes, which I absolutely love. Enhanced damage removal likes up in the energy, but also legacy energy as well to slow down any Lugias as well. Nothing brand new exciting, which I can really see around here, but we are seeing likes of Kieran, which I love as a really good switching card, also do additional more damage. Dragapult effectively 230 damage is a very, very powerful number, because it instantly can KO likes their Iron Hands, or even Miraidon as well, Power, which is a really good prominent number for where Dragapult can kind of go with it. I like the Roseanne's Research, try and utilize any of your other sort of special energies, as well as also your tool cards, another really good way around this one as well. Do I think Dragapult is well placed in the metagame right now? Generally, I would say no. Pure how powerful Gardevoir has shown right now, I think Dragapult might not be as played right now purely on the basis of this one. But I think it's good for having a back pocket. I think Dragapult's time will shine again, similar like a Raging Bolt. But if we have two archetypes, effectively may not have a bad sort of Gardevoir matchup. I know everyone said, oh, Dragapult has an amazing Gardevoir matchup. Effectively, we see Dragapult didn't perform as well. Gardevoir did really well. Could that actually be the case? I generally think Dragapult time will come to shine, maybe even in Worlds. But right now, I would say pop it down the binder just for a little bit, or to see how the meta is kind of going to be evolving. Now let's look at some very interesting ones as well. Ancient Box got a top 64, and there's quite a few new cards in this one. Gone are the likes of Coridon, but hello, Secret Box and Walking Wake. Now you might go, but Walking Wake, we're not playing the energies for this one. Yep, it's purely basis, so you can have a discard factor, and it has a 1 retreat cost, so it's not going to very much be a scary Pokemon in the actual spot. You can instantly remove it if you do style with it or have it as a pivot, or effectively it's always going to be discarded. And Secret Box, I feel like was made for Ancient Box, guaranteeing discarding 3 cards, get a supporter card, an item card, and stuff like that. Just makes this deck absolutely tick. And I really, really love that strategy for this deck. We can still see continue to use likes of Professor Stardust Fatality, you can instantly search for likes of Secret Box, and even utilize them, reuse them again for like a Power Pad. I think this deck is actually going to be pretty well poised. If it have a very, very good Gardevoir matchup, and Gardevoir was very dominant, don't be surprised if Ancient Box kind of like becomes a new best thing. I love Secret Box. I think it's such a silly aspect to kind of like search for deck, get nearly any one card you might potentially need, and it might have found its new home in the likes of Ancient Box. I really, really like Drew Kennett's list of how it really is played. I'm really excited to see how the deck is kind of going to evolve, if any more ancient cards will in fact be revealed. And finally, let's look at Ross Corpin's Iron Thorns deck, which is in fact gets 77th place, so top 128. And it's very interesting. One thing particularly that stands out is the legacy energy. Legacy energy on iron forms obviously is very, very powerful, but making sure you could effectively make your opponent have a 7-card prize game is a really, really good strategy. I love a cancelling clone in case it's a mimic you can go through this one. Really, really strong. If we see the likes of gardevoir doing exceptionally very, very well, having iron forms is a very good answer. But we did see a very big increase in likes of Klefki and even likes of Fluttermane nearly every single gardevoir list. So effectively, this could be a one-trick pony as well. A lot of good things about this one is a lost city, so effectively you can just purely focus on those sort of cards there. Did you play 4 copies of boss's orders and effectively try and win that way by lost zoning any of their really key cards which can really disrupt your destructivity. Could effectively be a nice way around this one. Question Hammer, I really like to kind of like get rid of any energies. Effectively, you're always flipping heads 50% of the time, which is also a very, very fun statistic. And I generally think this could see a really good play for playing control. It's a brand new archetype, brand new deck, and generally could be a fun way to play Iron Thorns in the future. Maybe it's going, maybe not in Rhydon, maybe not in the future box, but no, it's called Iron Thorns. It did well in the expanded tournament in Japan, and it got top 128 in the biggest tournament ever in which we've had. Now let's talk about the impact and how this is really going to affect our metagame going forward in the future. Now, one of the biggest things that we want to talk about is having the likes of gardevoir. Will we see a big increase in play? I generally think it will. I think we've seen people wanting to play gardevoir for so long. I know a personal good friend of mine has been wanting to play gardevoir for so long, but didn't know how it will really affect going into the new format. And we've seen it do really well. You know, I talked about it in great length in my mastering video. Granted, I was always going to say I was completely wrong about Monkey Dory. I can put my hand up high with that one, but we could generally see a huge increase in play, kind of going back to his stage 2 Pokemon, really relying, maybe even going back to Red Candy to be the aggressor in this one. Monkey Dory really does unlock the deck so much. Will it really impact the meta in Worlds? I generally think it's also still too early to tell, but I think it definitely has made some people be a lot more aware. People may have written up like gardevoir because it hasn't really performing that well ever since its real big debut in like the EUIC. It's did incredible in Japan, but never really had that translation over in our sort of format. So I do think that having this sort of thing will make people more aware of gardevoir. I think we could say goodbye to like these big basic, very, very fast aggressive decks like so Raging Bolt, but we could see the more return of likes of Shenpao, which for me personally, it's a much, much more fun and more aggressive approach as well. It has so much more opportunities as well. Is Raging Bolt and Dragapult just hype? Now we are seeing obviously Dragapult, the 2 best placed in Dragapult lists didn't really focus on Dragapult EX. And Raging Bolt did get top 16, but it constantly was the second most played deck in day 1. I believe it was the 3rd or 4th most played deck in day 2. So it's a big, big fall from grace in day 2, but still very, very popular and still did pretty well overall. But Dragapult was only 5% of both days and didn't perform as well as anyone really did think about it would do. I think this could be a little bit more hype. I think it's still very much early to tell, but I feel like we've now refined the list about where we could see Raging Bolt and Dragapult really kind of go. But Dragapult, I think, could get much stronger in our September set, and definitely something to be more considerate about this one. But with this all return of the likes of gardevoir, could we really see the return of Charizard? Everyone was really scared that it's not going to be performing very well. But in Japan, in both tournaments in day 1 and day 2 in a big Champions League, which I will discuss a lot further on Tuesday, they actually were the most played archetypes both days. So Charizard doing incredibly well over there in Japan. Knew it was going to do really well. It's doing incredible in the Gym Challenge series right now. So I think Charizard is in a very, very good position right now to have a really good return option. It obviously helps you really good in the Gardevoir matchup as well. And obviously my big favorite one is Shenpao set to do really well in this metagame? My big answer is yes. I think Dragapult, I've said that so much recently. Shenpao is in such a good position in this brand new metagame. I'm really excited to see how it will adapt to this one. Will we just go straight up 60 HP one, or are we scared about, we have the 70 HP, not because we're scared about Dragapult, because we're scared of likes of Monkey Dory and damage spreading from likes of Gardevoir. So I hope you guys have enjoyed this NAIC breakdown, kind of give my thoughts and feelings about every list and kind of where the metagame is progressing. I'm a big, big fan about where it's kind of going this one. It is a bit of a shock factor with Gardevoir, but I generally think we could see Gardevoir really can be the catalyst to make the format really evolve into be much more of a stronger format. So I hope you guys have enjoyed this video. If you have, please make sure to like, subscribe, and comment down below. What do you think the impact of NAIC will be to the metagame? Is it a good thing Gardevoir did really well, or did you want like some Dragapult Raging Bolt to actually do better than it kind of did? So I will see you guys in a few days' time for another video. Bye for now.